I'm here in my new exotic sports car. Peep the logo, double R's, Rolls-Royce, for all you brokies out there. In order to attain this lifestyle, I have to steal investor funds. So if any of you are accredited investors with $1 million or more, link in the description. I can promise 20% returns. I'm gonna help you get rich, but you gotta give me $1 million first. Some of y'all didn't understand sarcasm in the first video about Tai Lopez, so I need to remind y'all that this is the #1 investing channel on YouTube. The other day I released a video discussing Tai Lopez's complaint with the SEC $112 million Ponzi scheme. The video took off, 350,000 views so far. However, I just saw a few hours ago, a few entrepreneurs had some opinions about this. I don't like it. I don't agree. Let's react. Real quick, because I saw a lot of these comments, people victim blaming, saying if you gave money to Tai Lopez, you deserve to lose money. I love you guys, but I got to push back a little bit. Tai was rich before social media. He had the cars in the Hollywood Hills mansion before the famous ad. He sold over $100 million from paid ads, and he consulted with big brands and influencers behind the scenes to run their ads, to partner with them. Please don't take this as glazing. I just want to point this out so we can stop the victim blaming and saying like, these people are so stupid or they deserve to lose their money, which is disgusting in my opinion. He also had a couple courses. MentorBox was a legitimate company. These were not scams. So before we say these guys are idiots giving him $1 million, Tai actually had a pretty good track record. Despite you guys saying, you know, Tai Lopez is a big scam, I would never give him money. I would never give him money. I never bought anything from him. I wouldn't advise anyone else to do it. Just want to point that out before we start victim blaming. This is Russell Brunson, very successful entrepreneur, one of Tai Lopez's friends. He just released a clip on his Instagram about this complaint that I very much disagree with. Let's react.
There are a lot of people who start with very good intentions and they're trying to do successful things, and then they get to the spot where they get over their head, and then usually it's like 1 or 2 bad decisions, and then that thing snowballs into something that's uncontrollable.
The problem is he's acting as if this was outside of Tai's control. Every Ponzi scheme doesn't start as a Ponzi scheme where someone's like, you know what, I'm really going to screw investors over. I'm just going to raise money and just steal it from them directly. Tai had way too much to lose. What happens is there's a moment in time where the operator is made aware that the business is not profitable. Things aren't going so well. Okay, that happens. Things happen in life. Businesses fail all the time. No problem. That's not a scam. However, at that moment in time, the operator decides to raise more money. Why would you raise more money? So you can pay off the early investors, so you can keep them quiet. Because those early investors were promised 20% returns, which Tai and Alex were promoting all over social media. $300,000 invested, $60,000 yearly return. That's 20%. Okay? At that moment in time where Tai was made aware that the business was not profitable, guess what he did? Instead of going to investors and saying, hey, things aren't going well, we're going to stop raising money, we're going to try and make this business turn around, because he's the business expert, right? Him and Alex Mayer, very successful. No, instead of doing that, the ethical way of doing it, at that point of no return, he went to the unethical side, which is let's go raise more money and keep promising 20% returns. The big issue is Tai did not tell the new investors that the businesses were not profitable. That is how it becomes a Ponzi scheme, and it is completely in their control.
And at the end of the episode, the people end up in jail, they end up losing everything. And it's funny because most people come in and they're like, oh, that person was greedy, American greed. And there's only one time in me watching every single episode where one of the investors who lost his money came in and actually took extreme ownership for himself. But he said, look, yes, I was greedy, and that's why this thing went out. My greed was the thing that got me to invest in this in the first place.
To paint the investors as being greedy and as needing to have extreme ownership is so tone deaf that listening to this, I was perplexed. The thing with really successful entrepreneurs is that a lot of them have extreme ownership. That is a very valuable character trait, one I wish more people in America had. Very valuable personality trait and character trait that can drive you to success. And when you're dealing with your own stuff, totally agree, Russell, amazing. However, when you're talking about investors who are victims, they don't need to take extreme ownership for their decision. They were taken advantage of. They were defrauded. You don't victim blame in this case. That is not applicable.
Tai was not trying to come maliciously create whatever happened. I don't know what happened. Hopefully when he has his day in court that it turns out that it wasn't that way, but
intentions are a really interesting word because Tai allegedly took $16.1 million for personal use out of the $112 million he raised. He also knowingly lied to investors about the success or current failure of his businesses. So what was his intent? Does it matter? I have a video for you that had a very profound impact on my life. In the middle of 2018, a few months after Logan Paul's incident in Japan, Casey Neistat interviewed him, and he said something that has stuck with me since.
Like, I think that there's intent, and then there's actuality. And there's a saying that's like the road to hell is paved in intent. Because if all that really matters is what transpired, and what transpired is you and your peers, your friends, laughing and snickering and making light of a human being who had died. And I think that your intent in that moment is fucking irrelevant. All I see is what's actually transpiring.
There's nuance, there's context to everything in life. I think it's very important that we all have long conversations. We hear this side, that side, try to find the truth. However, at some point, especially in cases like this with Tai Lopez, we have the intentions and we have the outcome. We know the outcome. $112 million of investor money was lost. What are the intentions? At some point, we have to push those aside. We have to look at the facts as alleged by the SEC in the complaint, and we have to look at the outcome and judge it as we see. I mean, maybe Tai had good intentions, but his behavior was such that he committed fraud, according to the complaint. And in my opinion, he deserves to be in jail for that behavior.
He came in with good intentions. He was trying to create something amazing. He was doing his best. His strategy was very fascinating. It was interesting. Looking at it now in hindsight, he got it over his head and he didn't have the team and the things in place to be able to manage it.
That's not the responsibility of the investors. They were paying Tai because he positioned himself as the business expert for years. All the knowledge he had, all of the mentors he had. He spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on social media to generate extreme revenue and personal wealth over the years as a business expert. So when it came time to go properly evaluate businesses, buy them, convert them into a profitable business, and then ideally sell them, he raised money, took $112 million from investors. They gave him money because of his built-up persona of being a business expert. That's not on the investors to build up the team for him. He should have had it in place already.
Imagine someone's giving you hundreds of millions of dollars to do this thing and the execution isn't working. I can't imagine the sleepless nights, the stress, the anxiety for him, the guilt for investors, like all those kind of things. And I just want to be the person who's not casting stones. Tai, I'm rooting for you, praying for you, and I hope that you're able to get through this. And for the investors, I feel the same way. I looked at the court case, I read through the whole thing, and they've now gotten access to own the brands and the businesses, and hopefully they'll have a chance to be able to turn those things around and make some lemonade out of lemon.
I don't know how he could have possibly read the complaint and come to the conclusion that Tai is a victim out of this. Oh, the anxiety! Him flying private, I can't believe the stress he must have been under. He also seems to indicate that these brands can be revived. Tai gave up on this years ago. He's going on a podcast run now. He's on a new venture. Alex Mayer's onto some AI company. These guys quit this business years ago. The company was bankrupt almost right away. They gave it a chance, it sounds like, for a couple months. They kept raising money and did it. There was no operations here. I don't know how you could possibly come to that conclusion after reading the complaint. This comment is from Bradley on his Instagram. It's about the podcast we're going to react to in just a second. Both him and his guest, I don't believe, actually read the Tai Lopez complaint, so keep that in mind. I'm going to be a little rough on them, but I also don't think they read the complaint. But my counter to that is it's important to one of my criticisms.
I didn't know that he raised a bunch of money and then technically lost it all. Mm-hmm. I heard that it didn't do well, and so I was asking him, and he kind of shifted the subject, and because I didn't know much about it, I just kind of went on to the next subject.
Tai Lopez was a guest on his show. Notice that he's admitting to he didn't come prepared enough to keep asking questions. He didn't know, that's okay, but he didn't keep asking questions. It's very important to what he's about to say next.
Well, then all the listeners were like, why didn't you grill him? I'm like, grill him how? First of all. Second of all, dude, you screw up. Like, what is he supposed to do? Like, we're grown men, people. You buy into somebody's shit, dude. Do your due diligence and take responsibility for it. Like, what if it had made billions?
This word due diligence. Why didn't you do your due diligence? The irony here was so funny to me. That number one, he didn't keep asking questions of Tai he didn't do enough due diligence to keep asking him about the thing that Tai Lopez was running hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars of ads on all over social media. Also, notice that these two didn't even read the Tai Lopez complaint before giving their opinions on it. When you talk about due diligence, they're not even doing it.
Every investment, nothing is guaranteed, right? And
that's zero, dude. Every grown person that invests money knows that's why you are an accredited investor versus an unaccredited investor. It means you should know that there's risk in all of it.
This is such a horrible take. Whether the investors knew about risk, this thing called risk, has nothing to do with this case. It has everything to do with Tai Lopez. Also notice, if you guys read litigation, you guys read complaints, notice that there's no mention of the word risk. Never, because it doesn't matter. There's not some, hey, this investment was this thing called risky. Therefore, the defendant's actions were totally justifiable. No, not at all. Now, if you walked into a casino and gave a homeless man $500 because he said he'd 10x your money in the next 30 minutes. Like, okay, a reasonable person would say, yeah, that's dumb. That's not what happened here. Investors, it doesn't matter whether they're accredited or how much they knew about the risk. It was all about Tai and Alex allegedly lying to investors, continuing to raise money despite knowing that the companies were going bankrupt, and allegedly taking $16.1 million after raising money while their companies were going bankrupt. And then guess what? They just walked away.
I don't know the full story either, but
I'm pointing this out because too many YouTubers do this, where they try to give their opinions without knowing the full story or the details. The complaint was publicly available, and Brad and Ryan both didn't even read it. It's okay to not have an opinion on a story or to just read a headline and just react to the headline. But to call out the investors as not doing due diligence or not understanding the risk while you're trying to give your opinion on something and not doing your own due diligence for a podcast, I just thought was a bad look.
he was buying bankrupt businesses.
Thinking he could turn them into shape.
But just knowing that as an investor, you're like, okay, this is a pretty risky thing that we're doing. We're buying businesses that have already failed, hoping that maybe we can revive them as because we're going to take their brand and sell other stuff. That's already hyper risky to begin with. That's like a interesting thesis that you're hoping works out.
It was an interesting investment, sure. The risk does not matter. No one deserves to be defrauded. When you go out and lose money, it's okay for you to do it. If you go out and invest in a crypto coin, it's okay. But if you give money to someone else, they have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of you. It has nothing to do with risk.
If you're an accredited investor, you should know how risky this bet was.
Knowing how risky it was is totally irrelevant. It's all about Tai and Alex's behavior once they took the money. Sure, it's risky. That doesn't give them justification to commit fraud.
And it didn't pan out. But to your point, there's always risk reward. Like, hey, it's high risk, but guess what? If it does pan out, maybe we 10x our money. Maybe it's, who knows, right?
There's a reason that never shows up in court documents, because how much money could be made is totally irrelevant. Everything about this story, everything about the complaint is the behavior of the defendants.
Don't blame other people. Victim mentality is another trick of the devil's. They want you to believe that it's someone else's fault when in reality, it's your damn fault. You got responsibility.
I'll admit there are plenty of times where the victim should have a little bit more accountability. If you bought a course thinking you were going to get rich in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, you're like, I got scammed because I'm not rich yet. Or if you gave money to someone to go gamble for you, or if you gave money to someone to create a crypto meme coin, sure, we can point at that guy and say, hey, we need to take a little more responsibility there. That is not the case here. Tai Lopez positioned himself as a business expert. He positioned himself as the guy who can turn around businesses. He is known as the guy running hundreds of millions of dollars in ads as a business expert with all of his mentors, and he's got the team to turn it around. He goes on the news and promotes it, keeps promoting the success and lies to investors about the success of the businesses. You have to keep in mind, that is why I got so opinionated in the first video, is because once him and Alex allegedly knew that the businesses were operating at a massive, massive loss, guess what they did? They kept raising money. They held a conference in November 2022 where they kept asking for more money. They knew the businesses were floundering. They sent out emails to ask for more money. And then a month later, basically walked away from the business. They said, oh yeah, we can't pay out anymore. Can you imagine doing that? Nothing just happened overnight. It was like, they didn't wake up one morning like, oh, this business isn't operating well. No, they knew it for a year, possibly years. If we know the full story, there's probably going to be more in Discovery. They probably knew for years. There was communication between their team that they were failing for years. And again, these guys would know this if they read the complaint, but they didn't even do the most basic due diligence on their podcast, which is ironic because they're calling out investors. You should know the risk. You should do better due diligence. I just thought the irony was funny. I mean, look, I have a good relationship with Ryan. I've been on Brad's podcast. I have a good relationship with him, I guess. But I just had to call this out because I did not appreciate this at all.
What happens here? I hope nothing happens.
We already know what happened. Investors lost $112 million. The operators, after promoting themselves as business experts, I made $300 million in my startup, as the guys that would take your investment money and give 20% returns that they were advertising on social media. We know that those guys lost investor money. What you can hope for is that the courts work as they should. The civil complaint should go through such that investors win a massive judgment against the defendants. I also made the very emphatic statement in the first video that I think this should become a criminal complaint. That would be our system working properly.
As they go through this, and who knows, sometimes on the way you make enemies and people come after you. I hope this is a story that comes and leaves and they're fine and they continue growing their businesses.
PBD's friends with him, so I know he's a little biased.
No, there is no, I hope they keep growing their business. They need to be held accountable for their actions in this case. And keep in mind, if you want to make 20% returns, send your money my way so I can keep driving around in Rolls Royces. Thanks so much for watching.